You are here to debate about fake news and disinformation in the digital era. But what do we actually mean by this concept, fake news?
So when we talk about misinformation, we have three distinct categories I want to highlight. There's misinformation, which can just be anything that's false. It's objectively false information that spreads either on social media, in print, broadcast, and it's deliberately false in order to trick somebody into believing it. So that's misinformation. There's disinformation, which implies an intent behind it. So that's a piece of media with a message. It's something that is, deliberately false and trying to inflict harm on somebody. It could be a state actor. It could be just a fake news writer, but it has an intent behind it. And finally, there's malinformation, and that's truthful information, but might be misleading in its context. This could be a leak. It could be media taken out of context with a new meaning. So those are broadly the categories that we talk about when we talk about misinformation. And importantly, I want to make sure that fake news isn't being put in a light that puts it on the media, right? So like a correction in a newspaper isn't fake news because it wasn't a bad intentioned mistake, right? So when we talk about misinformation, we talk about deliberate misinformation. We don't talk about a media mistake or a media report that isn't necessary. It doesn't turn out to be true if it's reported rigorously and independently. So when we talk about misinformation, we want to focus on those three.
Are there studies to determine their effect on public opinion?
Yeah, there's plenty of research on this issue. So pretty much when people see misinformation, they're going to change their thought about whatever that topic is. So there's a great study that found once Donald Trump said that he won the popular vote, which he obviously didn't. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. Trump just won the Electoral College. Registered Republicans believed that almost by a majority margin. So that's not even a case of deliberate misinformation like a fake news story. That's just a false statement from a politician. And that has consequences because registered Republicans believed him. So when false information is presented in a way that the audience wants to see it or wants to believe it, then they're more likely to believe what is said.
Fake news has now become a term and a way to discredit all sorts of true news. How can people realize that what is being offered in the media is fake or not?
Yeah, so there are a couple key ways that I always tell people when they're trying to determine whether or not something is fake or not. So first is always do a gut check. So fake news writers are trying to get some kind of emotional reaction out of you, whether it's to make you mad, make you sad, make you happy. Fake news is supposed to make you feel a certain way immediately. And social media platforms are created in a way that makes you share, like, retweet, or whatever the action is in an instant and not do your research first. That's why social media platforms look the way they do. So my first recommendation is do a gut check. If something seems too good to be true, if you're too sad, too angry, always do a Google search. Make sure that somewhere else is covering what you're seeing. Make sure it's not being covered anywhere. Sometimes that's a good signal too. So for example, if you see a story that says Pope Francis endorsed Donald Trump, and you do a Google search and nowhere is covering that, not even the New York Times or anything, that's a big news story. So if no one's covering it, it's probably not true. So that's one. There's also a variety of tools online that can help you do this job. There's a bunch of Chrome browser extensions that help you search for images online, make sure that images aren't real or aren't fake. So there's a variety of tools that you can learn about.
For press sites, the ability to attract readers is needed to generate revenue from the online advertising. If the provision of false information attracts users, what about the ethical code of journalists?
Yeah, so I mean, what you're outlining is basically that fake news writers try to make advertising revenue from what they're producing. And what's important about that is that people who publish misinformation don't care about ethics. They are in it for the money. They're in it for the Google AdSense money from Facebook that they make on clicks. So that's a key component of the business part of the misinformation ecosystem. They're doing it by monetizing clicks from people, which again is distinct from the media, the mainstream media, which is credible. They do their job really well, and they do adhere to a certain standard of ethic. They make their money in the same way, but credible news isn't always as exciting as fake news. So fake news has taken the media model and just duplicated it for a more nefarious reason in order to trick people and make money.
Yeah. Is globalization the fact that fake news is accused of trying to influence the policy of other states? Are there studies that indicate this possibility?
Yeah, so we don't yet know a ton about how misinformation affects policies of other states. There is a growing body of research in this area that's really important. It's found that people do tend to believe misinformation when it's presented to them. which is a horrible finding. But then there's also stuff that, when fact checkers debunk a story as false, people genuinely take that correction to heart and change how they feel about that certain article. But that's not to say that it's perfect, right? So when a fact checker debunks something, people might change their mind about that fact, but they don't necessarily change their political persuasion or their party. So, as journalists, when you're thinking about your job is to correct misinformation and highlight credible news, you can affect how your audience views a certain topic, but you can't necessarily change their mind.